What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Make It Custom. I'm Carl Fisher, and today we are gonna work on my buddy's fenders for his 59 Monarch. His name's Andrew. He's been on the channel before. You may have seen him around helping us with the ramp truck and other projects. This is the piece that I made in the last video. This is 100% made by hand, the hard way. What I mean by the hard way is that this piece was made out of one piece. So it's very difficult because there's so many different shapes in this. This looks like it's just like a little piece, but it has a lot of different form in it, a lot of different shrinking areas, a lot of different stretching areas, and basically this kicked my butt. It was a difficult piece to make because of how much we had to bring everything over. This probably isn't how I would do it again. Actually, I know it isn't how I would do it again. This makes far more sense to do in two pieces, so that's what I'm gonna show you today. So don't forget to like, click subscribe, hit notifications. Let's do some simple hand metal shaping, two pieces, headlight eye. I want this to be as simple as possible, and I'm sure that you do too. So, what we're gonna do is take a piece of paper. We are going to template this one because there's nothing left over there to template. If you are working on a vehicle where you don't have any material to get a template off of, there's a trick. What you can do is take some of this stuff. It's really gross. You're gonna have a hard time getting it off after, but you can just fill it up with a bit of foam and shape the foam so that you can get a paper pattern off of it. That's what you could do, right? With this right here, we could fill this up with foam, we could shape it all, we could check the headlight bezel fit, we could do all that and then get a paper pattern off of it. We're not gonna do that because we already fixed the other side. So to make this in two pieces, we're gonna break up the shape in a specific spot, right? We're not gonna do it half and half. We gotta break up the shape where it makes the most sense. So on this particular headlight, it makes the most sense to break it up right in the middle of this. I'm gonna break the shape up all the way around because that means I basically just have to barely roll this piece. I can bend the piece this way and I can barely roll that piece and we'll be able to get it. I'm not saying that it's just a roll. It's not. There's shape in here. There's a radius here that's different from the radius this way, that's different from the radius this way. There's a few things to look at, but that's why making it in two pieces is gonna be simpler, is because we'll be close to the edge when we're doing our work. So. So what you can see is all these little wrinkles forming. That's telling us there's a little bit of shrink happening there. See, if I make the paper pattern tight here, we have a ton of shrinking to do, right? But if I make the paper pattern loose a little bit there, and loose a little bit there, now we're sharing the amount of shape and not having to shrink all from one side. Now we can do a little bit of shrinking here and a little bit of shrinking there, which will be quite easy with just the Mother Tucker hammer and the bowl, or we could just stretch it out a little bit in the center with the sandbag. That's, you got options. You wanna be as accurate as possible right now because this is actually like what you're gonna go off of. When you're using this method also, you don't want to leave yourself any extra wiggle room. If you leave yourself like, oh, I'll just like leave an extra 1/4 inch on there, the further you extend it, the more shape is at the edge. So you're gonna have to do more shrinking or more stretching. Number two is that if you make it a little bit too big, then when you're trying to fit two pieces together, you have to trim both sides. You're just making yourself more work. This is the most important part. It's much more important than the actual shape. I'm not gonna transfer the body line because that's something that we can do afterwards. And this body line, even though we're gonna reverse it, it's gonna be slightly different than the other one. They're almost never the same. If you have watched the other video on this, where I did make that other piece, I suggest you do if you have not. It will illustrate the difference in the paper pattern because we made a paper pattern off this fender for that other piece. But because we wrapped all the way around, that amount of shape, these big wrinkles here, that's how much shrinking we did on that other piece. That's why we're making it in two pieces. So these wrinkles are literally telling us exactly what needs to happen for it to fit how this paper fits right now, right? So there's a little bit here. We'll mark that as like mild shrinks. Little shrinks, that's my LS. Little shrinks. Here we've got shrink, shrink, small shrink. There's one there. Okay, I'm gonna pop this thing off. We'll cut ourselves a chunk of 18 gauge sheet metal. Some people like using 20, some people like using 18 gauge. I use 18 gauge strictly for the fact that this is probably 19 gauge. I would rather have a little bit thicker than factory than a little bit thinner. This is obviously an area that loves rusting out because there is no inner wheel well on these cars in these years. So they just huck mud up in there. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. I love the Beverly shear, but these are a JS1602 Makita thing, not sponsored. They're just great little sheet metal shears. This area is where the body lines are. This is our little bit of stretching. This is our bit more shrinks. This is our shrinks. Cool. Okay, piece is done. This is the inside, like I was saying. So we are gonna start bending it this way. First things first is to start with a little bit of just blocking this out. I'm gonna add a little bit of shape into those areas just with the Mother Tucker hammer. Okay, now we're gonna do a little bit of shrinking here. Come into the stump. If we wanna pop our own little shrinks, what we can do, we can knock them in here. What I mean by popping them is I'm just hitting it at the end where I want that tuck to come up to. So we just kind of like gave it a little bit of a crease, and then I pressed it right at the end of that. And because it's being supported on this edge in a bowl, it forces that to pop up. So we've popped our tucks in here that are now gonna shrink because we're in the edge of this bowl and we're forcing it into that shape. It's forcing the shrink. We're cupping that tuck. So as you push down on the tuck going like this, the bowl will force that metal together and shrink. That's all that's happening right here. Now it's kind of bent itself into that shape. We actually did do a lot of shrinking there. As I pry this out, this is gonna wanna curl in a little bit. Let's do the same thing over here. So same sort of deal. We had 4 tucks in there. So I'm gonna put a little bit of a roll on this edge as well. When you're metal shaping, I feel like this is something that's super overlooked. Elio mentioned it. I know I mention it in every video I try to, is that when you are using a piece of sheet metal and you're adding shrink and stretch, form is manipulating the material, okay? Form is a 2-dimensional bend. If I go like this, that's form. I didn't change the shape. I could be working it like this, bent like that, to get into a machine or to use a piece of equipment or to get into a dolly or something like that. And then if I bend it back out and just put it back into shape, I'm putting it back into form. I'm just forming it. It might fit kinda, and it could be the perfect shape, but it doesn't quite fit, and you just bend it, and then you're like, oh my goodness, it fits. So every time you check, mess with it and tweak it to get it to fit exactly how you fit it last time, or else you cannot track your progress. We'll get it to fit as good as it can, and then we'll try and fit it in the same spot each time. That's kind of a rough guide. We're giving ourselves just a rough guide so that we can check it in the same spot each time. This is looking pretty good, like it's kind of close. And then we've got this to contend with a little bit. So I've got to definitely roll the edges more, and these little wrinkles, that is telling it that there's still too much material here to allow it to do that. So a little bit more shrinking will need to happen. We'll try and do it without the shrinker stretcher, but if you have a shrinker stretcher, this is perfect for it because you could easily shrink or stretch these things, right? Shrinking that in the kick shrinker. What we'll do is we'll T-dolly a little bit more, just try and get it closer. Like there's tons of back and forth with this type of work, right? One thing I'll show you too is that this is a slapper. I've got a bunch of them. I made this one on the channel. This is like a polished, flat, nice flat slapper out of a file. A friend of mine made this. This is Steel Smith's if you want one. I'm pretty sure he has it on his website, but they're made out of a leaf spring, so it's like the right kind of steel. But they're so heavy, it's just kind of nice to have one that's that heavy sometimes because it really moves a lot of metal. This right away looks like we definitely need to rearrange this because look at how that's lining up past, you know, it's back on that. So this needs a bit of a twist, I think. When I brought this forward, it pushed up right in this spot. So I think that this is gonna need more shrinking right there. This is a tucking fork. Built this years ago on the channel. What it does is it just grabs the edge of some material here, wherever you want that shrink, and you can just make your own tuck. You get to make your own, actually, I'll pop it the other way on the inside here. Be easier for us to work with. See, we made this little tuck that collected some material to shrink. I try and make it kind of vertical. It's gonna look like it's messing up your whole piece when you're putting the tuck in there. The bowl has its limitations, right? Right now, I guess we could kind of knock it in the bowl and get that done. But another way that you can do this is by closing the tuck on something flat. I'm adding pressure in my arm here, trying to push this to here to help keep that tuck poking up. And then I'm just gonna try and hammer down to close the tuck on the edge. You see that 45-degree hammer hit? How it's creating a spot right in here that's actually gonna be able to touch and flatten all the way out while capturing that material there. That's what we're trying to do. We should be able to just kind of reform that. We've done some shaping to it and it won't fit now because it's bent. So now we've got to just kind of shape it back into what we want. It's getting there, but it needs to be closer. We can make it closer, right? So part of it could be the bend. That was just a little bit of form. Look at how much closer we are now. We're perfect right there. Kind of comes away a little bit here, which means that it needs a little bit more roll. Right now we're dead flat. And if we look at this, it rolls down a little bit, right? So this being our opposite piece, we're still a little bit too high. To pop those couple tucks in, I think what I'll do, this is like a really nice way to do small tucks, right? So we marked out a couple. They have to go deeper than this rounded edge, so you're gonna destroy this rounded edge to work this tuck in, but so in order to close the tuck, you have to have a little bit sharper angle on the tuck, or I find it's easier anyway. So that's why I'm trying to make these as pronounced as possible. If they were really shallow, it'd be hard to do, right? Because all your force down would be just doing that. But if you have it a little bit more vertical, your force down is being able to, you know, compress steel. That is what you want to see. You want to see that turn down, right? Turn into a little bit of an M. That definitely brought her down. Probably too much. We definitely need to smooth that out a bit. Okay, another thing I'll just talk about for a second is, because like Elio pointed this out just now, is that it might be a little bit confusing. You've never seen me use this, and I'm using it a lot right now. It's heavy and it's moving metal, and we're still in kind of like rough stages of just getting metal pushed around. So I am just really liking it. It's a new tool for me, but just regular body hammers for everything I've done so far totally works. The beauty of something heavy and wide like this is it's hitting multiple high spots at once. You know, like, so if you've got a dip in a piece of metal and you hit it with a hammer on a dolly, like the dolly's on the bottom of the dip, you have to kind of hit on either side to get that dip to come up, whereas this would hit both sides at once. It's good for pushing metal around. It's looking like a form that might be something. Okay, I got a little bit of form to do here. Just bending this edge around. Yeah, we've really popped this whole thing up, so I've got to make sure that I can get this area back down, kind of right in here. Okay, it's looking really good to about here, but it does look like it still needs to get a little bit closer right in this area right here. So I've got to do quite a bit of a deep shrink there. Feel like we're getting closer now. Maybe a little bit more right there, see where that's peaking, but I'm gonna try and just force it against my body and hammer it over the T-dolly. See if we can massage that shrink into it. We are pretty dang close. All right, so like everywhere's touching nicely and I've got a lot of shape into it. Right now, let's attack this little peak. You see how I'm fitting nice and tight all the way around. Actually, I could be a little bit tighter on the backside here. That little peak is saying that it needs to be shrunk, needs to be pulled together to bring that down. Same thing with this, needs to be rolled in to meet up with that. Let's do those two things right now. Okay, our roll did a little bit better there, but it kind of opened it up a little bit when we smashed that down. So we're gonna have to give that a bit of a bend. It'll probably show that it needs a little bit more shrink now. Okay, so definitely this curve that's in there and our piece is straight. Let's take the tucking fork. Give ourselves just a little wrinkle in it. See what that does, see how it brought that closer. So that's our next shrink. Okay, we're getting this to fit pretty nice, and it is kind of peaking a little bit right there. I do like this curve that we're getting in it. That actually looks pretty dang good. I think that we could curve this a little bit more. I'm tight here and I'm above here. So what's happening is that there's too much shrinking here that's pulled this tight, and that's what's keeping us from coming down closer. So I've got a little bit of a gap in here, like almost like 1/4 of an inch between the rusted older material, which maybe it's even less than 1/4 of an inch, but that's what the thought process is next, is that like I'm fine tuning, you know, this all looked like it was a bit of a flow, but I need to open this up to allow that to come down. That will bring this further away, and then I'll need to probably shrink here to bring this in. So let's start with that. So using this type of a head of a hammer, you can see if I hit on an edge, see the hammer marks? They're like long. So it's stretching, it's pushing the material this way and this way. So that's linear stretching. We're so close now that I'd like to start planishing. So I'm gonna do this all hand planishing. I'm not gonna use the planishing hammer. I just wanna show you guys that like, it's not an incredible difference in having like all the tools. If you use certain techniques and dissect your shapes in such a way, I think that you could save hours and hours and hours. If you can just kind of figure out the paper patterning and dissecting shapes into smaller bite-sized pieces, exactly what we're talking about here by allowing that extra lip to just be another piece that gets a weld, like not a big deal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use different dollies on the stand, and we're gonna planish this out. There's still gonna be some fine tuning. We're still gonna probably tune the edges up a little bit and fit it. We still have to put our body lines in there, but we're gonna get rid of all this kind of wobbly stuff by just using this and planishing. Like when you have a polished hammer like this, it does make it really easy to see the spots that you've hit, right? Like anytime you've got something harder than the material itself, hammer heads, files, leaf springs, whatever you're making your tools out of, if you polish it, it's gonna transfer and be accepted by the softer materials. So whenever I'm like hammering on it, I can see where all the hammer marks are. So I can see what's, you know, I can see where my dolly's at, basically. You can read the highs and lows just by telling what's dull and what's been hit with the hammer. Okay, we're getting like pretty close with this. I'm pretty happy with it. We're nice and tight, like all the way around here. Like this looks great. The flow in here looks great. We're nice and tight all the way here. Like me letting go of the panel, it wants to sit right where it is. So very happy with it. Couple more little bits of planishing. There's like a couple of dings there I noticed I didn't hit. So I'm just gonna planish like a little bit more. And then I think we are gonna bang these into it, and then we're gonna cut it in. Okay, we don't actually know where they're gonna end. We're gonna figure that out on the other side, but on this side, we'll be hitting on this line here. We're gonna hit that down with a corking tool. I just use a chisel, like just a plain old chisel that I just kind of ground on the end. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. Okay, so the trick with this is just pressure down with the chisel. I've just got some like horse mat underneath it, just some rubber. You just wanna hold it nice and steady, one whack at a time. Okay, we've got a nice little crease that we can see from underneath. Okay, so I'm gonna mark where this one is, where this one is. So that's the line that we're trying to go parallel to. Okay, right about there. I think we need to still flatten out this little area in here. This is technically shrinking it a little bit by adding a step. It's pulling the material in to allow it to do that. So it did pull the panel a little bit. So we're gonna have to flatten out this area to try and bring it back down, or stretch this area a little bit. So I'm gonna try just like hammering it down and just seeing if we can get some out of it. Might try just like a wooden block. So a lot of this is looking pretty good, and I think that there's a little bit here that we've got to bend. We probably have to do a tiny bit of a shrink there, or just bend it and then try and roll it while it's bent, and it'll probably be enough. Like, it's really nothing. A little bit of a form there to pull that in tighter. Same thing here. We had them fitting better, but after working them so much, I think that they may have moved just a little bit. But I would say that's pretty dang good. So that's what I'm gonna work on right now. I'm gonna mark that spot. So we'll probably just bend it, like I say, let it peak there, and then hold it bent, tap it on the dolly, on the T-dolly. Just a bit of a bend along this, right in there. So maybe there'll be a shrink in that spot. See, it always kinks. While it's kinked, we come here, kind of push down so that that kink is, you know, we're fighting that kink, holding it in this orientation, and then if we can get that to come back down, we've given it no choice. So we'll do the same thing in that spot. We'll let it kink. Hold it like that. Little too much. We might have to do a little bit right at the end here too. Yeah, see, now those pieces are quite tight. You can't really bend them anymore. All right, well, there's that first piece. Do you see how much easier it is to break that shape up? versus making this whole piece. And the only difference between this piece and this piece is that we're just cut right there. So this little lip that got destroyed from extreme shrinking will now be a beautiful little lip with very little shape into it, because we're just gonna roll an edge and we're gonna weld it and it'll be done. Super happy with the way everything's fitting. Let's have a closer look. So we've got nice and tight all the way around. I think it's like 100% good enough for like a respectable repair on any car. So I'm just gonna give this like a quick 80 grit scuff, the old Instagram 80. You know what I mean by that, the Instagram 80? That's just because like every fab post ever just looks so beautiful in 80 grit. All right, well, that's all the time we have for this video, but I am gonna continue on these fenders. I hope you guys are enjoying the simple metal shaping stuff. It's actually really enjoyable for me too, to just kind of like bring me back to my roots and do things with less equipment. Because honestly, this is how I would do this repair. Like if you guys weren't watching, we weren't trying to make a video on simple metal shaping, I would choose to do this in two pieces. The only thing differently I might do is I might use the planishing hammer just to smooth it out like really fast. Really, like if you've got a tucking fork, you don't need a power hammer. If you're doing this type of repair, you can do so much with just hand stuff that I don't believe that anybody needs to be discouraged by not having big equipment to do big metal shaping stuff. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys. Guys and girls, thank you so much for watching. And if you don't mind, huck a comment in there, throw a like. If you're not subscribed, you might want to, then you'll get notified with each and every video. And yeah, thanks a lot. Enjoy your metal shaping journey. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.